Have you ever wondered if a simple craving could overturn even the most resolute commitment? This ancient tale from the Buddha's time may hold a surprising answer, as it follows the rise and fall of a devoted monk undone by a taste for indulgence. A young man named Tissa, the only son of a prosperous couple in Rajagaha, once visited the Buddha at the bamboo grove. During that visit, he listened intently to a discourse on detachment and the path to enlightenment. The words touched his heart so deeply that, once the sermon ended, he felt a powerful resolve to forsake worldly life and become a monk under the Buddha's guidance. However, he was still bound by his parents' wishes, for they refused to let him go. They reminded him of his responsibilities as their only child and insisted that it would be unthinkable for him to abandon the family's wealth and traditions. Yet Tissa felt certain that only a monastic life could fulfill his spiritual yearning. Holding firm, he followed the example of another disciple who had once resolved to sit in fasting until parental consent was granted. Day after day, Tissa took no food. His parents, seeing their son grow weak, realized that his commitment was unshakable. Rather than lose him to starvation, they consented with heavy hearts, allowing him to join the Buddha's order. Soon after, Tissa received full admission as a monk, taking upon himself the 13 obligations, a set of austere practices that reinforced his dedication. From that day, he was known among fellow practitioners as Tissa the Less, or Direct Alms Tissa, for his habit of gathering alms meticulously from house to house, omitting no doorstep. As the weeks passed, his reputation for devotion spread. People spoke of how he never sought favored donors, but accepted whatever food was offered, from plain rice in humble lanes to simple curries in wealthier quarters. Observers admired him for shining like a bright lamp in the Buddha's teaching, steady and unwavering in his discipline. Not long after he took vows, the Buddha moved from the bamboo grove to Jetavana. Tissa followed, continuing his direct alms routine there. Meanwhile, a festival in Rajagaha caused Tissa's parents to recall their son's absence more sharply. In the past, he had been the center of every celebration, wearing lavish garments and bringing joy to the household. With him gone, the house felt empty. They grew so distressed that they gathered Tissa's old ornaments, placed them in a silver casket, and lamented how their only child now dwelled far away in Jetavana. A slave girl working in the household noticed their tears and asked what caused such grief. The parents confided that Tissa's absence seemed unbearable, especially during the festival. The slave girl, perceiving an opportunity, stated that she could bring their son back if given authority to arrange matters. The parents, desperate to see him again, agreed to her plan and gave her funds and servants, sending her off to Savatthi with the hope that she would succeed. Arriving there, the slave girl rented a house situated precisely along the route Tissa frequented for his alms rounds. Each morning, she waited for him, offering carefully prepared food when he came by. Her gifts were always sumptuous, dishes that stood out from the usual fare, with inviting aromas and flavors designed to be irresistible. Gradually, Tissa, bound by his vow to accept whatever was freely given, found himself lingering, overcome by the taste of her cooking. At first, Tissa believed it harmless to accept such offerings. He reasoned that food was merely nourishment and that a monk should show no partiality. Yet he felt a strange attraction grow as he returned to her house repeatedly, always receiving meals that appealed more to his senses than plain alms typically did. Unknown to him, the slave girl had plotted meticulously, recalling that if Tissa were hooked by his craving for taste, she could persuade him to leave monastic life. Over time, she asked him to step inside for just a moment, to rest while she readied more food. Slowly, Tissa broke his earlier resolution not to sit in private dwellings. Eventually, she feigned a sudden illness, instructing her servants to claim she lay ill in a nearby chamber. When Tissa arrived as usual, they took his bowl, asked him to wait indoors, and mentioned that their mistress wished to see him. Even though he knew the monastic guidelines discouraged intimate visits, Tissa felt compelled to check on her, perhaps out of gratitude for her hospitality. Bound by the subtle threads of craving, he followed them deeper into the house. There she tearfully confessed that his parents pined for him, that he was an only son, and that he deserved a more comfortable life than one defined by rigorous alms rounds. Beneath her words, the aroma of a fresh meal lingered, arousing his senses further. At last, he departed with her, heading back to Rajagaha. His parents, though shocked at his changed attire, welcomed him with relief. Some people whispered that Tissa's spiritual commitment had been fragile after all, while others simply marveled at how readily he allowed indulgence to draw him away from the Buddha's side. As news of Tissa's departure spread, the monks at Jetavana discussed the incident one evening in the Hall of Truth. Some expressed sadness that such a shining example of devotion had fallen so quickly. Others wondered if he had ever understood the practice deeply. The Buddha listened calmly, then quietly explained that this was not the first time Tissa had fallen victim to craving. In a past life, the same pattern had taken place under different circumstances. At the monk's request, the master recounted a story from the distant past when Brahmadatta reigned in the great city of Benares. In an earlier era, the gardener Sanjaya served the king's splendid pleasure gardens. One day, a notably cautious wind antelope wandered in, yet Sanjaya allowed it to roam freely, and soon the antelope became a regular visitor. When the king heard of this, he challenged Sanjaya to capture it non-violently. Sanjaya used honey to lure it closer. Gradually, as the antelope became accustomed to the sweet taste and Sanjaya's presence, it followed a trail of honey into the palace where guards trapped it. Moved by pity and the lesson that a simple craving can overpower caution, the king released the animal. Later, the Buddha revealed that in a past life, Tissa had been this antelope, Sanjaya, a cunning slave girl, and the king, the Buddha himself. The story became a timeless lesson. Even a small, unchecked desire can unravel noble intentions, underscoring the essential role of mindfulness.